I'd like to thank everybody for joining us this afternoon for our first 3D experience at 3. My name is Frank Cavalier. I'm the EDU account manager for CADimensions. I handle everything EDU in the Northeast here. And you guys have probably talked to Kevin Holbrook, our SOLIDWORKS expert extraordinaire and 3DX extraordinaire expert. So we're here just to kind of keep a real formal webinar. We've heard some feedback from our customers of what 3DX is, and we thought this would be a great platform to kind of bring it to the general public. So if you guys have any questions, please feel free to put all the questions in the chat. We do have some pre-populated questions from registration, so we'll go through those, but it's going to be a real informal webinar. We're going to answer some questions, go through a couple tips and tricks and some what's new, and then just if you guys have any questions or that you're experiencing or would like to know, please let us know. So we're going to start off with our first question here. It's probably on everybody's mind. Does SOLIDWORKS run completely in the cloud?
So Frank, thanks for that. So the Q&A side, and I will answer that. The Q&A side here, we're really just trying to make sure that you have a forum to get your questions answered. And before I go into that cloud side, I'm just going to kind of run through what we hope to have as the goal of this series. This will run monthly from here on out. Our customers and prospects are asking for ways to learn more, to get more educated on 3D experience. So the focus here for this session, we are going to meet once a month, either on the 3rd or at 3 o'clock. That's where the 3 comes in. We are going to focus it on questions. As Frank mentioned, we have a series of questions from registration, from folks that have registered that we can start with. But if you have any questions during the presentation, just post them in the chat. We will stay on and we will answer those questions no matter what it is. If I can't answer it, I will find an answer and get back to you. One of the things we want to do is highlight changes to 3D Experience products. We want to make sure you understand how much it's changing, where it's changing, and how it might affect you, whether you're using 3D Experience or you're looking at 3D Experience. We also want to highlight day-to-day workflows using the products. I'll give you one example. How do I find duplicates and eliminate them? Or how do I share with external stakeholders? Or things like that. And I do take requests, and we'll fill these into this series as well. And then really what we're trying to do is give you a forum to get educated on the future of SOLIDWORKS. This is the future of SOLIDWORKS. There's no doubt this is where everything is going. This is your way to get educated prior to making that move. Maybe your company's not ready, or maybe you're already there. We can help make you even better. Obviously, we can't cover everything, so I figured, what's the best way to focus this? I want to focus this on the tools that most people are going to use. So those will be focused on what we call 3D Experience SOLIDWORKS. You'll learn a little bit more about what that is if you're not using it, but the standard, pro, and premium SOLIDWORKS version. There's also what we call the connector. So if you hear us talk about these two things, sometimes you'll hear us say connected versus the connector, and I'll explain that as we go. But realistically, they both have to do with SOLIDWORKS. So we'll make sure we cover conversations related to those two things. And then we're also going to cover the X apps. What are the cloud-based apps? This may be the first time you're hearing that, but the 3D Experience Learning Series has a bunch of cloud-based apps that are very SOLIDWORKS-like and do have relationships with SOLIDWORKS, and we're going to cover those. Other than that, I'm only going to focus on tools that bring important processes or consumption of SOLIDWORKS files to the platform. I don't want to, there's so many different things I could show you. I don't want to get into the weeds. Although I can answer those questions, I want to focus this on CAD users and people that consume the CAD data and things around it. So hopefully this will be of great value if we stay focused on those particular things. So what we're going to do today, as Frank mentioned, is we're going to start out with some Q&A. So we have some pre-questions that were put in there. I want to talk through some of those. And we're going to talk about the release schedule for 3D Experience SolidWorks, because that's going to lead us into what today's session is. The main focus is a top 10 what's new in FD03. And then we'll finish up with some more questions and we'll talk about the next session. So again, kind of a what's new session today with some Q&A. So Frank, let's go ahead and start with some Q&A here. What was the first question again? Let's talk a little bit about that.
Yes, the first question was, does SolidWorks run completely on the cloud?
Does SolidWorks run completely on the cloud? We get this question a lot because it's confusing. Everyone says 3D Experience SolidWorks Cloud, right? The assumption is that SolidWorks runs entirely on the cloud side. In other words, you can open up any device and run it, and that is not the case. Both versions that we're focused on in this webinar, Connected and with the connector, both require a machine that you can install SolidWorks on. So in order to do that, you must have SolidWorks. Now, I'm going to flip that coin a little bit because the X apps, which are part of the focus of this session monthly, are 100% cloud-based. And I'm going to show you a little glimpse of those today, just to start to get the thought process going a bit. So the answer to that, Frank, no. Anytime you connect SolidWorks to the cloud, SolidWorks still runs entirely locally, but it's connected to the cloud in different ways. And you're going to see a little bit of that today.
Perfect. I knew that was a hot question. The second question is, can I use the 3D Experience platform with other CAD tools like Creo, NX, and others?
Ooh. So actually, I think the story for the platform with other CAD tools is more powerful than we have for like PDM or even just interconnect out of the box. With the platform, you heard me mention the connector versus connected. With the platform, there's connectors for other CAD tools, for CATIA, for Creo, for Solid Edge, for AutoCAD. So a similar environment that you're going to see today, where you have the CAD installed locally, but it connects to the cloud and saves to the cloud, that same story goes with all these other CAD tools. And it also even extends to like Allegro and electrical tools. There's other tools that are built in with connectors as well. So I don't want to paint the picture of too small of a story, but yes, you will be able to use other CAD tools in conjunction with SolidWorks on the cloud.
Perfect. And the third question was, does 3D Experience SolidWorks have an option for education and research? And since the EDU world is my expertise, I will take the lead on that. So yes, we do have an option for our education customers, K through 12 and higher ed. It is a great EDU bundled package that gives you access to the cloud apps, X apps, and the collaborator space. They are working on getting access to researchers. There is some, the way that the 3D Experience is set up, it doesn't allow the two worlds to talk to each other as of yet. And there's also a great tool called 3D Experience Engineer, which kind of everybody that has heard SolidWorks and Dassault products always hear about like those CATIA and Simulia options. That's kind of bringing some of those tools in that some of our education partners have always asked for. So in the short answer, yes, we do have access to it. And if anybody has any further questions, please feel free to contact me with any concerns or setting up a demo to see those tools.
Awesome. So they have access to most of the tools that the commercial side has, Frank?
Yes, they do. And actually, the way it's bundled together, it's a little bit more cost effective for K through 12 and higher ed. So the way it's bundled on the commercial side, it's more set up that, your mechanical engineers and your electrical engineers and your process engineers are going to get those tools. We understand that college kids might be going down many different paths, so we want to give them experience in as many roles as possible. So they can kind of use a little bit of 3D experience all over the place.
All right. All right. Thanks, Frank. I think we'll move into some of our topics and come back to the Q&A here. So I want to talk about the 3D Experience release schedule, because this will help us understand what I'm getting ready to show, which is what were the top 10 enhancements of 3D Experience SolidWorks in the base functions. 3D Experience platform does a release every around 3 months. Once a year, that release is called the golden release. It's equivalent to like when you get the next release of SolidWorks Desktop. However, the difference here is in between that, every 3 months, we get what we call functional deliveries. So these are releases every 3 months that have tons of new functionality. Now, I know we've got some 3D Experience customers on the call here, and I think they can vouch for this, so that every 3 months you get some new things, and they show up after an upgrade weekend. You have new tools, new technologies. What we're trying to do is find ways to deliver that information to you, and this is one of those examples as they go through the top 10. What we're going to cover today is functional delivery 03. So it's the third functional delivery since the golden release. When it comes to patches and hotfix, they're delivered to you directly. So as you see me introduce you to how you launch it, this is also how it will deliver a patch and tell you, hey, this thing has an upgrade for you. Will you, go ahead and do so? So that's kind of the release schedule. The next session, the next release is about another 2 months away. So this one just came out. It comes really fast where you get new ones. So the release schedule is nice because you're constantly getting new tools in the arsenal. So let's start to walk through the top 10 enhancements in FD03. And I understand at this point, we've got a big group online. Some of you have seen the 3D Experience platform. Some of you are using it. Some of you may have never seen it. So I'm going to do a little bit of backstory on each of these so that you know kind of where it was and where it's going to be and where it is now. But here are the top 10 enhancements, again, focused on SolidWorks users in those particular roles. The first one I want to introduce is something we call the Welcome app. I'm going to jump to my 3D Experience platform. Clearly, this is outside of SolidWorks. Now, the reason I bring you here is because prior to FD03, if you're going to launch 3D Experience SolidWorks, we recommend that you go to the web page and you launch it using an icon. So that icon, let me show you what this looks like. It's just an icon that says Launch SolidWorks Connected. If I click on it, it will launch SolidWorks Connected local on my machine. And that's a fine process, but they wanted to work on ways of making that whole thing a little easier. So what they've done is they've created a welcome app, and I'm going to introduce you to this. A welcome app runs in the web page, and it becomes this landing page for the cloud. So when I first jump out here, I can be welcomed with this screen at all times. Now, it has a bunch of things on it. First of all, it has some links to the Learning Center, which is a series of learning videos. Regardless of what you're trying to learn, there's a bunch of content out here for you to consume. There's also links to public communities. If you've ever posted in the SolidWorks forum or other communities, those will be listed in here as well. But most importantly is this area off to the left. So the area off to the left when I launch the Welcome app is going to take a look at your machine and your login and give you some insight into the apps that you have access to. Now, it just so happens that it groups together the design apps, really what this session is focused on, into one section so I can clearly see what I have access to. Now, to the right of each of these bars here, you'll find a button that will allow you just to open it right up from here. So I don't have to go and find the icon. I can open it directly. There is also a little information window here that has links to some of the learning specifically for that app. If I select open, it's going to open on my desktop and launch the application. Now you can see that some of the X apps are in here. And I know we're just starting this conversation, but an X app in the world of the platform is a 100% cloud-based design tool. Now I'm going to show you a little bit later some enhancements within X Design, but it also recognizes that those CAD tools are available. And if I pull down this little menu, I can either open it, or if it's already in another tab, you can see go to it in this tab. It actually knows that it's already embedded in another tab of the browser. And if I click on it, I can see that the X Design is still in there. So what they're trying to do here is just to create an environment so that you can launch here, quickly open your apps, get started in the morning without having to worry about finding the icon, making sure it's right. If there's an update, this will say that there's a patch or an update, and when you select on it, it will ask you if you want to patch it. So this is new for FD03. I think it's the first release of this. I can see them going a lot further to make things even more useful. I want to stay on the cloud side for a moment because there was a little bit of a, I'll call it an issue, with data extraction for non-CAD users. Prior to FD03, if we had other people consuming SOLIDWORKS files, they didn't have a way to get SOLIDWORKS files off the cloud unless they had SOLIDWORKS. So we needed a way of kind of like zipping up all the SOLIDWORKS files in an assembly without having things like Pack and Go. Pack and Go is in SOLIDWORKS, but if you're a non-CAD user, let me show you what this looks like, because I think this was an interesting enhancement. It uses an app called Product Structure Editor. And what this allows me to do, I'm going to get rid of that for a second. It allows me to select the assembly and come in here and tell it I want to export as. So now I'm looking at the assembly and I want to take it off the cloud no matter where I'm at. I can say, here's my export method. We'll call this, we're going to export the CAD files. And what is the name of that? Do I include any drawings related to that? And I select go ahead and export. Now you'll get a little message here that says, hey, your export has begun. We'll send you a notice when the export is ready. Now, while the export's getting ready, and it won't take very long, I want to show you another tool that is being worked on and that has been developed over the last few releases. Oh, there's my message. Your export is ready, and I'll show you that in just a moment. So what we have in here is the ability to, let's see here, view, is to actually extract out PDF and step files that have been created and attached to the CAD files. So you can see here, I have just this simple mouthpiece pin. And if I'm looking at the information, you can see that there's a step file and a PDF file attached to it. One of the enhancements that you see is we can now do on-demand outputs. So if there was one that did not have an output, like a PDF or step file, I can click on it, and it says, what do you want to generate, PDF or step? And then you can hit the generate button. So imagine others in your organization that need PDFs or step files, they can generate them when they feel like it. Okay. Once they're all generated, or you have what you need, we often got asked, well, how do I gather up all the step files in the PDF files, put them in a zip file, and send them to somebody? Well, that's very simple now as well. So if I click the upper level assembly, there's a button here that says download all derived outputs. I can say, give me step 214s for 3D models, PDF for the other, and I say download. Now, I don't know how many step or PDFs are in here, but I'll immediately get a zip, and I can open this up and I can see the files that were exported from that. So nice, easy ways to self-serve step in PDF files, and to generate an extraction, which let me show you what this looks like. The extraction shows up as basically an email saying your export is ready. If you click on it, it brings you to a location where you just have a download button to download the zip file. Okay, that zip file will show up in your downloads folder, and then you can open it up and all of your CAD files will exist in there. Okay, so here we go. Go ahead and open it up, and you can see there's all the files from SOLIDWORks. So fairly new, and it's going to allow us to get data out much easier. Now, these were the only two enhancements that were focused on the CAD process, not necessarily the CAD. So let me transition over, and let's talk about what's new, item number 3. This is probably the most anticipated enhancement in FD03. 3D Experience SOLIDWORks, which I'm going to introduce you here in a second and give you a look around, is cloud connected. In other words, it always must be connected to the cloud until FD03, which we can now perform an offline mode. Okay, so offline mode, what does that mean? Offline mode means that you can disconnect from the internet at 30-day increments. The rule is you must grab any files that you need, pull them down from the cloud, because you can't go access something until you reconnect, right? If the internet went down, you can't do that. Before I introduce where offline mode is, I think it makes sense for those on the call that have never seen SOLIDWORKS Connected to get a look around. What should I expect to see within this environment? Let me turn that pin off here. So SOLIDWORKS Connected, because it's launched from the web page, the welcome app, like you saw, launches local on the machine, but this version of SOLIDWORKS is a little different. This version of SOLIDWORKS has the cloud completely embedded in it. I have a toolbar in my command manager with functions that are specifically related to data management on the cloud. I will have on the right-hand side 2 tabs in my task pane, one that compares the files I have open to what the latest is on the cloud, and one we call the Cache Explorer, which I'm going to introduce a little bit more here in a second. Okay, over to the right-hand side, if I were to right-click on any component, they've embedded a lot of the typical commands in the right-click menu. They've also embedded some typical commands in the flyout for the display manager. So you'll see those kind of embedded in usable. You'll see that in just a moment. So the reality is that this is a SOLIDWORKS version that the cloud is built into everything we do. Even at the top where it used to say, here's the file you have open, it tells you whether you've locked the file or not. It tells you where you're connected to on the cloud. It tells you what you're logged in as on the cloud. If I were to, try to customize a toolbar, I can add my lifecycle and collaboration tools to any toolbar. So this is a different level of SOLIDWORKS than you may have seen. So this is SOLIDWORKS Connected. Now, because it needs to be connected to the cloud and integrated as close as possible, they did make some changes, even to things like the pull-down menu. Like save or save as are now saved to the cloud or saved to this PC. Instead of save as step, it's now export as, because we're exporting it from the cloud as a new version. So this is what the connected version, this is what we're going to highlight over this session, over weeks. We're going to talk about workflows. We're going to talk about how to use certain things, replace parts, change names, things like that. But this is SOLIDWORKS Connected. Now, the connector, the other version that I've been talking about, is really just SOLIDWORKS as you know it today. The only difference is you have the add-in and the Cache Explorer, the two tabs. Everything else about SOLIDWORKS is exactly the same. It's desktop SOLIDWORKS as you know it. Okay. Now back to our top 10 what's new, offline mode. So here I've opened up a file, and now I want to go offline. I'm going to go away for 30 days. I'm going to work on this assembly. I don't need the internet. I don't need to be connected. If you go in the upper right-hand corner of your SOLIDWORKS Connected, that's where your login is. If I select that login, there's an option in here to work offline. And it tells you, hey, first of all, you must close all your documents. So let's go ahead and close that. Let's just see exactly what it tells us here. Now, it just kind of guides you through. Hey, if you want to go offline, this will take effect immediately. You can work offline for up to 30 days, and you could reconnect at any time. Okay. After 30 days, it will automatically reconnect you. It has to make sure that it's pulled the new license for an additional 30 days. Make sure that you have downloaded all the files and that you're ready to go. This allows you to disconnect from the cloud whenever you feel like you're getting on the plane. You know you're not going to have service. Pull down the files, disconnect, and work. I'm interested in the folks, James, Bob, some of the others that are on the line. If this would be valuable for you, just post in the chat if you think that this is a good thing. But this is work on offline. So let's keep working through the enhancements. I want to talk a little bit about the Cache Explorer. So the Cache Explorer is a way for a user to see what files they've brought from the cloud down to their local machine. When you work on something, it does bring it local. Now, they added the Cache Explorer. Ha, Bob, I love it. So Bob made the comment that he can work from anywhere he wants, even fun and exciting campgrounds. Absolutely, Bob. This brings you the versatility. I love that you can get what you need, take it all down, and then go wherever you want. Without this, there was the kind of a hole there. Now, I will say this. Well, one thing it doesn't do is if your internet goes out in the middle of something, it doesn't automatically revert to offline, right? You've got to get what you need off the cloud. You've got to work offline to pull the license. If it disconnects because you have a thunderstorm, you're not going to have the same experience than if you go offline. So there is a little bit difference there. I'm hoping that they'll look at that. How does it revert and give you offline mode if things do go bad? But related to the Cache Explorer, this allows us to see the files that have been cached local to your machine and allow us to do some things with it. First of all, there's filters at the top, so I can filter on assemblies, parts, drawings specifically. I can search in the list, so if I get a lot of things cached locally, I can just type in a quick search, and it will filter what I need. There is a little refresh. Now, when it comes to the columns, there's the default set of columns that are in here, and you can see here. So file name, size, what space they're stored in, state, rev, block state, and status. But these are all sortable. So if I wanted to sort on maturity state, these are all in work, or I want to sort on file name, make them alphanumerically sortable, I could do that. What I love the most, however, is the ability, they gave you this in the last release, the ability to delete from my PC. But I love this. You can actually now take and open directly from here. So I can take this file, drag and drop it directly into the open screen, and open the file directly from my cache. I really don't even have to go to my cache anymore. I can really just work out of this Cache Explorer. Now, when something is open in the Cache Explorer, you can see, because of my settings here, the valve retainer, power button, and air source. I have multiple files that have been opened because of some of the references. So there does give some feedback along the way as well. So Cache Explorer enhancements, that was a big one with FD03. I'm going to close this down. You can see here's the other two files that got opened in the background. That's just because of my settings. Insert from search. Let me explain this. This was just another little nuance of what they're trying to do with integration. So I'm going to open up an assembly, and I want to add a file to the assembly from the cloud. So it doesn't exist on my machine. It's not cached locally. So what I can do in this case is I can search on a particular file. Let's just search on gear, and I'll find a gear that's in my system that makes sense for me to drop in. Now, it's allowed you to drop in for a while, but what it hasn't done is done a full integration. In other words, it didn't act like a SOLIDWORKS file would if I drag and dropped it from Windows Explorer, right? It didn't treat it the same. So what I really wanted to do is I wanted to treat it the same. Let's just take, let's do one of these pushing. When I drag and drop now into the assembly, it will launch the insert component command. Okay. Now there's a couple reasons why that's important. One, we can switch configurations. This bushing has many different sizes. I can pick the size I want directly from the cloud. Another thing I really like is you can get your rotations in here. You can also, set up some of your default options for your initial drop-in, and you can drop in multiples if I had that option selected. So before, I used to just drag and drop it in, and it would do nothing. It wouldn't bring up a dialog. It was not aware of the fact that it was going into SOLIDWORKS. I think this should be a good indication of how tight they're making this integration with the 3D Experience platform. Okay, so we're up to 5 here. Let's keep going. Some basic revision enhancements. Let's open up our air source again. I'll just do that right from my cache. Now, since I already have a file open, what I usually do is drop it right on my command manager. Then it knows I'm not trying to drop it into a part, and it will open up my files in its own window, and I can continue to move. Now, what they've done in FD03, first thing they've done is they've changed what it looks like. Let me expand this column out. For the column that says, is this the latest revision of a file? So you can see clearly that this overmold is not the latest revision. Okay, so this icon is different. It used to be a tiny little plus sign. You almost cannot make it out. Well, now with the red X's, you can make out what's going on here. The other thing that they've done is they've added the revisions icon to the action toolbar at the bottom. So now, if I wanted to load another revision, I can go back and see what revisions there are and make the decision of what I want to do. Now, to actually do the load, all I do is say, hey, go, I want to replace by revision, and I want to pick the latest revision, in this case, to load. So it makes it a little bit easier to see. I can also see how many revisions have been created, and I can load the one that I want without a problem. Okay, simple little things, but it makes the workflow that much easier. Also, default bookmarks. Now, for those of you who have never used the platform, I need to explain what a bookmark is. When we save files to the cloud, we need a way of organizing. Because we're not saving them to Windows, there's no Windows folders, right? There's no, that technology is a little different. So we use something called the bookmark editor. Now, for all intents and purposes, the bookmark editor is nothing more than folders. It's a little different when you dig in deep, but as you can see here, double click to open. When I get to what I'm looking for, the file exists when I get there. It's really a folder system. Well, when I save files to the cloud, I can choose which bookmark things go to. Now, if you're working in a particular project, you don't want to have to pick the bookmark every single time. So what they added in FD03 is a default bookmark. It says right here, the default bookmark for new data. I can select here, and I can tell the system which bookmark, which folder should I put in every time I go to save the file. And now when I go to save, it knows to try to add it there. Now, if you're working between projects, you may have to come in here and switch the bookmark or assign it differently. But if you're working on a single project, this will allow you to keep it as is and work that way. Makes it real nice. Okay. Let's keep going here. So match drawing to parent. Let's pick one. Let's see here. So I want to, let's just take this here. We'll open this thing up in its own window. I want to create a drawing for this, but I want the drawing to, and the title of the drawing to be named exactly the same as the assembly. Inside the add-in is going to be an option that says use their part or assembly title as the new drawing title. So whenever I create a new drawing, I don't have to give it a name. I'm basically telling it to name it the same as the part or assembly that's used to create it. Now I can do that when it's first saved or every time it saves. Why would you do it every time? Because if the part or assembly title changes, it will change the drawing title to match, so there's never a mismatch. Now I'm going to keep mine as only when you first save. So let's create a new drawing. Okay, let's put our, we just said power inflator here. I'm just going to put a single view on here just for the sake of our conversation. Now you can see already, you can see right here, the title is empty. It knows what the name of the file is because the file was attached. Now the reason I'm focused on title, it's probably confusing, but title is the unique identifier on the platform. You can't put two files out on the platform, in the cloud, that have the same title unless you want to. So watch what happens when I do a cloud save. I'm just going to do a simple cloud save of the drawing. I tell it where I want it to be stored. And you'll see that it automatically pulled the title from the assembly that was on it. And you'll see this will be pre-populated. So that will maintain a relationship here. Okay. This will keep those in line and keep those connected. So that is new in FD03. I saved the best for last. I truly believe this is a game changer. It's a new way of collaborating with stakeholders. Stakeholders that take your data and are going to make modifications or add their own files to it. And then you're responsible to bring it back into the cloud and incorporate their changes into your data. Let me show you this. This is really phenomenal. So I'm just going to go back to our air source here for our example. I want to be able to send this to an external vendor, and I only want them to be able to update one subassembly in the upper level. So what I'm going to do is in my tools action bar is a command that allows me to both import and export a package. When I export a package, oh, it's telling me save it. Let me just do a quick save on this. When I do a save, it's doing a cloud save. It's any changes that I've made on the cloud, on the files, it will update them on the cloud side. It sees that I changed the revision, that part's part of an assembly, and that assembly is part of the upper level, so it's asking me to update those. Let me also unlock all these files. There's no need for me to have them unlocked. These are kind of outside the scope of what we're talking about. So I want to create an export because I want to give this to an external vendor. When I do this, it will open up an app that runs directly in the task pane that allows me to choose what the external vendor is going to have access to. We'll use this first section here. I want the external vendor to be able to add files to the upper level assembly, modify the power inflator, but I only want them working on the valve retainer. I can control which files they can edit. Now, there is also a button up here to add drawings. So we can go through, if there happens to be a drawing related to this, I can say add drawings, and it will go, it says, oh, there's one drawing found, and it will add it to the list of drawings, and you can say, does it go out for edit or read only? But you can choose what's done there, okay? What it's gonna do is create a new type of zip file. It has a completely unique extension. It's an SLD PKG, a SOLIDWORKS package. Once we get this set, we choose where we're going to deliver it to the customer. We can save it directly to our machine, so give it a name, and it saves the SLD PKG wherever you want. You can send it an email or another delivery system. For those of you who are aware of the platform has a Dropbox-like delivery system we call 3D Drive. We can actually save it directly to 3D Drive. Okay. In this case, I'm just going to call this Air Source 2, and we'll go ahead and export this to my desktop. Okay. Now, what does the customer get? How does the customer even work with an SLD PKG? On the SOLIDWORKS website is going to be a free add-in that you can point them to that they can download that will allow them to do a simple import of a package. Okay, it's going to look a lot like what I'm getting ready to do here. So imagine somebody who doesn't have the cloud, doesn't have connected, but still wants to work with you. You could do an import package. Okay, I'm going to pick this. I have one on the disk that I can show just for an example. And when they select open, it's going to show them what files they have access to. Okay, this will bring it open. It will open them up, and they're going to be able to pick a single file, open it up from here. So notice this matches, here's the files you have read access. Here's the ones you have edit. Now this is an old one that I made. You can see I have a little bit more for edit. Now for you, when you get the package back from the customer, you're going to have this supplier status column that shows you if the supplier has changed any of the files that you've given edit permissions on. Now, it's kind of hard for me to make an example by myself, but what would happen is if it was changed, you're going to have the ability, there's going to be an option to overwrite the current rev if it's in work, or create a new revision. So this function is going to allow you to export and control permissions, bring it back, and integrate it back into your data management solution, all while you're in SOLIDWORKS. Okay. This is new in FD03. The last thing I wanted to talk you through is XApps. I didn't want to leave these out. There was a lot of good stuff in 3D Experience SOLIDWORKS. The XApps are, we'll call them where they're growing up, right? They're becoming SOLIDWORKS on the cloud. They're, I explained to somebody, they're like a tweenager. They're still a little bit awkward. There's some things they don't do very well, but you know it's going to be good. At least that's what I think my tweenager. But I wanted to show you what they've enhanced in XDesign, because you're going to clearly see that these are things that we've had in SolidWorks for a while. But they're adding these things because they're going to make this thing look like and be like SolidWorks. So here are the 5 things that I highlighted just in XDesign. And then I'm going to take you in and I'm going to do a variable fillet so you can get a sense of what it looks like. So first of all, they've updated the design manager. Just like the feature manager, give better feedback. They've added variable fillets. Loft selection manager, that's something we've had in SolidWorks Desktop. The ability to flip a mate alignment, right? Something that we take for granted, but it's now in the XDesign tool. And then sketch patterns that automate the dimensions. Now you're immediately going to look at that and say, yeah, I have that on desktop. What I want you to just consider is that this tool is growing up. This is going to be as good as SolidWorks Desktop someday, but we'll be able to run it completely on the cloud. So let me show you what it looks like. Okay. So in my web page for the cloud, I have my XDesign loaded on a tab, so I can launch my, let me just refresh my page here. I can launch my design app directly from the web page. Okay. In this case, I want to create a new part. We're just going to call this webinar. And when I create the part, this is just like doing file new inside of SolidWorks, right? It's going to go ahead and it's going to create the file. It's going to store it in the cloud data storage, and it's going to give me access. Now, let's see if I can get this thing out of the way here so you can see the whole toolbar. I'm not going to spend a lot of time in all the details. We'll probably cover some things in either next month's session or after that and get a little bit more detail. But you should probably already see this. It looks a lot like SolidWorks. Sketch, features, surfaces, assembly. But let's go ahead and create a quick block, and we'll put a variable fillet on it. This is going to look just like SolidWorks. I pick a plane. I create a sketch. It brings it normal. I hit my S key. It allows me to grab a rectangle. I can draw the rectangle. Now here's something unique to XDesign. Instead of adding a dimension using the dimension command, I could just pick the line, pick the dimension, and type in the value that I want. Makes it a whole lot faster to do what I want. I can exit my sketch, hit my S key again, and go ahead and extrude, and I can pick the area I want to extrude. Notice the dialog for extrude has everything built into it. Adds, cut, thin, surface. I can create anything. We call these super features, but they're still very SolidWorks-like. So let's talk about variable fillet, something that they've added in FD03, just a function that didn't exist. Let's go ahead and add a fillet. I'll pick an edge. We have constant, full round, and variable, just like SolidWorks. Let's go ahead and select the variable fillet. I want this end to be 2, this end to be 6, and now I want to create a control point in the center. So I can add a variance point, I can pick a location that I want it, and then I can control what it is I want it to be. We'll say this is going to be 10. Okay. Then we have control over how it interpolates between them, linear or smooth, and when I accept it, it adds the variable fillet. One of the things I absolutely love, if I want to edit that variable fillet, if I double click on in the platform in XDesign, it takes you right to it. So double clicks get you just about anywhere. Okay. We got a question here. We'll tackle Brian. That's a great question. I'll finish this and we will definitely answer that.
I was just.
But what I want you
Kev, so we'll tip off. I've noted it.
Okay, I definitely want to address that. That's great. So what I wanted to show you is that, like, I kind of feel like this is, I don't know. I've been using 60 to 70% of SolidWorks Desktop. It's getting there, and they're answering a lot of questions about functionality. They're adding things every 3 months. And what I showed you, these 5 things, they've added other 5. You're probably looking at this, well, where's sheet metal? Where's mold? Where's weldments? Where's drawings? Let me just show you that those all exist. There's a little button here that says switch app, and I can switch to any of those apps. Drawings, weldments, molds, motion, sheet metal, even some swoopy shapes or curve shapes in X shape. And we will cover that in future webinars for sure. I know that's going to be asked. But each environment is unique to the individual item. So I just wanted to give you a sense of what X Design is, how it's growing up along 3D Experience SOLIDWORks. The key to this is they both use the cloud for data storage, navigation, all these other things that I'm showing you are cloud-based. It's all going there. Okay.
Thanks, everybody. Enjoy the rest of the day.